You're right on time because Orange Juice in the Kitchen is about to get started. We're your hosts. I'm Annie Graff.
And I'm Maggie Jensen. Pull up a chair because the OJ is flowing and it's about to get juicy.
We're getting deep in our convos about sobriety and mental health because that's how we've both found deep love for ourselves and the lives we live.
And when you love yourself in your life, there's nothing to escape. This is the real on how vibrant and colorful alcohol freedom feels. So grab your glass.
Cheers, besties. Let's chat. What is up, you guys? It's your girls, Annie and Maggie, and we're back with another episode on Orange Juice in the Kitchen. And today we're talking about something I think super relevant, and that is alcohol and celebrations or holidays or get-togethers. Something slightly larger than simple social gatherings, but we're going to talk all about it today. We're going to have a really candid conversation on our mindset now when we think about alcohol and how that fits into celebrations and holidays. And we're also going to talk about how that hasn't always been the case and previous mindsets to that same topic and past experiences. And so we're just going to give you guys the real like we always do.
Yeah, we're going to be going over a few of our not so noteworthy experiences. Around the holiday time, it's just so glamorized that every function is booze, open bar, drinking, mimosas in the morning, mimosas before we open presents, or Bloody Marys. That was literally always my holiday mindset for so long. And we have some real that we're going to share as far as how that led us to, in my mind, I'm like, freaking wasted those holidays with people that I can never get time back with. And how I look at holidays now. Yes, in my very early sobriety, there were nerves. There were like, I don't know, how is this going to be fun? How am I actually going to celebrate? How am I actually going to enjoy time with family members that I have a bad attitude towards, which is a huge thing as well. Like, I think I leaned on drinking because I assumed that conversations with Auntie were going to be uncomfortable, and actually they're great. But, to kick things off, as we always do, to share my quote for today, as we get into this conversation, is just a really quick one by a gentleman named Neil Donald Walsh. He said, "Life begins at the end of your comfort zone." And when I think about my holiday mindset for almost 2 decades, about 15 years, it was my comfort zone that I was stuck in that said, hey, we're showing up to the family event. You better have a sneaky flask. You better excuse yourself to take those sneaky shots to be able to have fun and celebrate and endure all that is family relationships. And I can really see how I had such a bad attitude towards spending time with the best people in my life. Why was that? I don't even know. I think it's because I truly didn't like myself. So I projected that onto everybody else. But anyway, we're going to get into this. I know that my life, especially around the holiday seasons, it didn't start until I said, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone of drinking away my day, and I'm going to be present with my fam bam, and I'm going to make memories. And once I did it the first year, it made me realize wow, these really are the moments that we're living for. We're living to be able to spend time with these people. And who knows if this is the last holiday that we get with this person. So why should we be escaping it? So we're going to be touching some emotional things, some funny, cringeworthy things, but also just all in all, inspiration so that you can really lean into stepping out of that drinking comfort zone for the holiday season.
For sure. It's funny because our quotes are kind of similar, really short. And actually mine's an unknown author. But my quote is, when things change inside you, things change around you. And I think that's so simple, but it fully embodies kind of how my sober journey has played out. I think in the past, and here's where I want to take it is like in the past, when I've approached sobriety or tried to cut out alcohol or just like have a weekend off or have a month off or try to see how long I can go without it, nothing was changing within me. I wasn't committed to doing any sort of work on my mindset, my thoughts, my relationship with alcohol, why I felt that I needed it, what I felt like it was adding to my life, if it really helped me become a better version of myself or not, or why I felt like I needed to escape the true me to be this drunken version of myself to feel more comfortable in social situations or whatever. Like I wasn't doing anything internally, which meant nothing really was changing. So no matter how much time I spent away from alcohol, ultimately the day that I chose to drink again, it all came like crashing back. It's like no time off, right? And it would always be okay, like a bender of a weekend again, you know. And I'm just thinking back on we're recording this now at the tail end of October, and I'm thinking about my sober October attempt a few years ago. And I mean, like I said, I've told you guys, I lasted like 4 days, and then I gave myself an excuse. I was like, well, I spent 4 days away, so let's take a weekend, and now in reaching actually today 10 full months of sobriety, I've realize that like so this quote is so true. When things change inside you, things change around you. And as we kind of talk about this topic on alcohol and holidays, the holiday season is coming up, and I have felt such an immense change within me that that perspective on what's going on around me is completely different, which then it's like, are things changing around me, or now am I just looking at things differently, you know? And so looking forward to this coming holiday season, it's like I'm not even like considering myself missing out on the mimosas or on the wine. I haven't yet gone through a holiday season in like full sober mode. So I'm really looking forward to it. And Maggie kind of touched on this, but it's like in the past, I look back on the last handful years, 10 years probably. When I look back on it, probably, yeah, 10 years of holidays that I don't have 100% of my memories there from all those things. Like, I recently had two close family members pass away, and looking back on holidays with them, it's like, I don't remember. Yeah. And it's like, I have the pictures, or I remember getting there. And one of my memories from a few Thanksgivings ago is like making a charcuterie board with my aunt. And she just passed away about a month ago. But beyond that, I don't remember like any great conversations or like any good moments. Like it's so crazy how many moments I've just like missed out on because I was physically there, but I was not mentally there.
Yeah.
And you know, it's so true. Just like what's going on internally for us is so indicative of what is reflected in our external, what's reflected in our memories, in our processing of the situations going on around us. And I don't know, that's just crazy. Now it's on my head right now, just like in thinking about being with family and being present. The other weekend we had my sister's gender reveal, and my grandma's there. And we had a whole day. It was like, Saturday afternoon. So 12 hours with family or whatever. And and my sister announced like she's having a baby boy and like all these fun things, whatever. But at the end of the night, my grandma was really cold and she had a blanket on, and I was cold. So I went over and I like went under the blanket with her and like snuggled up with her, and we were kind of chatting, and just this like really quick moment. I mean, it was like a few minutes, and then someone interrupted our conversation and whatever, And my mom the next day was having a conversation with my grandma, and she was like, "Oh, like, did you enjoy yesterday? Like last night was so fun, right?" And she's like, what did you like best?" And she goes, "You know what?" This is my grandma speaking now. She's like, "You know what? You know what the highlight of my whole day yesterday was?" My mom was like, "Well, finding out that you're gonna have a great grandson, that."
That could be it, maybe.
Yeah, and my grandma was like, "Well, yeah, yes, that was great, but no, it was Annie came over and snuggled with me under this blanket, and we had a little chat, and that was my favorite moment." And when my mom told me this, it's like it makes me so just happy that I get true Annie, authentic Annie gets to be there for those moments. And I have that memory. I remember that.
Mhm.
I know I intentionally was like, "Oh, I want to go snuggle up with my grandma," and made a point to do that, when I've been so consumed with alcohol. I mean, there's a chance that drunk Annie might have done that, but
I was
not
gonna ask, would you have even had that, like, that desire? Would that have seemed
no.
like a cool thing to do in the moment when you're all buzzed and, like, dopamine riddled? You're like, "Let me go sit on the couch with my grandma." I know I wouldn't have. I would have been searching for whoever was in the house, like, drinking or dancing and listening to music. Like, I wouldn't have spent time with my grandma if she's just sitting
Yeah.
there.
Right, or like, and if even if I
Yeah.
did, I was trying to think, I'm like, even if I did, like, it would have looked totally different. It would have, and
Mhm.
would I even have remembered that? Or would I even have noticed my grandma sitting there cold on the couch, cuddled up with a blanket? Like, probably
Yeah.
not. I think like when I look back on, times with family and friends, and when I was heavily consumed with alcohol, I was my biggest focus.
Yeah.
It's so I was so selfish, like, and I'm not saying selfish is a bad thing, but when drinking was, something I was doing all the time, it was like I was only concerned with what Annie needed at the moment, what Annie wanted, what Annie was
Mhm.
thinking, what Annie thought was funny, what Annie wanted to talk about, what is Annie doing, like, and it wasn't about the other people in the room, which heavily influence what happened. I am a strong energy when I'm in a room, and so I can only imagine what that was like for other people who were around me. And I don't know, it's so crazy to think about, and just having that small little memory with my grandma from the other week, I'm like, damn, like I know that I would have made an excuse to be drunk at this gender reveal if alcohol were still a part of my life. And I, this version of me wouldn't have been present. That memory wouldn't have been made. My grandma wouldn't have
Mhm.
had that moment. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know. It's just like, it's little things like that. That just make me so grateful for the internal change that has gone on over the last 10 months for sure.
Yeah, as you were talking, I wanted to ask this question, putting you kind of on the spot, but just for anybody who's listening that has, like, done the whole, like, I'm going to take a weekend off or a month off and, like, hope that time alone heals
Yeah.
all. Like, what was it for you that was like the flip of the switch to say, I need to do the internal work versus just paying attention to the external stuff? Was it one specific experience, or was it something that you learned along the way?
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good question, because Halloween a year ago is when I had my big epiphany
Mhm.
of like, holy shit, I have to stop being this version of myself. And to kind of give you guys some context around it, I had an instance, it was actually like the weekend before Halloween. Flo and I had just come back from like traveling abroad. We had been like in Europe for months, and just got together for a little girls' night now that I was back in Dallas and everything. And I went on this girls' night, and ultimately, I mean, long story short, I just took things too far per Annie normal at the time. And, being that I had been away for, I think it was like 4 months, I hadn't been in Dallas, hadn't been around these people, my friends. And I think that, I mean, to me, it wasn't a night anything out of the norm. And if nobody had made a point to let me know otherwise, I probably wouldn't have done anything to change my behavior. But that night I took things too far and nothing bad happened. And even like the next morning, so the next morning I woke up and of course I'm like hungover and feeling blah and whatever, but I didn't have this sense of like regret. Like I wasn't like, oh, I did something bad or anything like that. Except when I opened my phone and I saw that a group message had been created with me and two of the other girls, and pretty much, and they were in really serious tone of, hey, we just want you to know we love you and we're here to support you,
Mhm.
but our plans for next weekend. So, like I said, this was the weekend right before Halloween, and I had planned this whole thing with my whole friend group, like 30 people, this like Halloween party, pre game, and then we're going out to a club, bottle service, whole thing, coming back after, like plan the whole thing. And they were like, we just have to let you know, like, we just don't feel comfortable being around you, essentially. But we love you, and we're
Oh,
not upset or anything. Just like last night was a lot. And I remember reading this and I was like, what the fuck did I do? Think anything big happened. And to give you guys some like the understanding of what happened now after the fact of what I found out is like I was like hopping between friend groups. So I like seen other people I knew out and would run away and go hang out with them on the other side of this
mm,
bar. Then I was like outside and then I'm coming back. And then like at one point I made like a quick turn and like bumped somebody and she dropped her drink, shattered her glass. Which defensive Annie was like, well, I didn't drop it, did I? No, like
yeah.
girl, she needs to hold on to her glass tighter, like trying to be all defensive, like it wasn't my fault. And then I
Oh.
I said something that just was like off the cuff to someone that's not like
Mhm.
a super close friend of mine, which is kind of an acquaintance, and they took it in a different way. And so like just a lot of little things that ultimately, and then the culminating thing was that literally, I mean, it was these two girls that put me in a group message, but their feelings about it, and then everyone else who was there, because we turned the girls' night into like a big friends night, um, pretty much like agreed. And so the plans I had made for
Wow.
Halloween turned into nobody nobody wanting to be there.
Wow.
There was like a select few, and then we ended up like anyway. So the realization that like somehow what I considered to be a normal drunken night was making people feel so uncomfortable and making people want to spend time away from me or need time away from me. After I had been
Mhm.
gone for 4 months, I was like, what the actual, like, I'm like, and that is not me, that is
Yeah.
not, that's not authentic to me. I would never say something to offend
Mhm.
somebody or that's rude. I would never like, I don't know. I'm just like, wow. Okay. So that was a really big realization for me that I realized like something deeper is going on here for me.
Yeah.
And I had tried, sober months, sober
Mhm.
weekends.
Mhm.
I tried cutting back or having water in between my drinks and,
Mm.
um, being saying I'd be the DD at the beginning of the night, only to end up being the person ordering the Uber, saying, "Guys, we're fine. I'll just order an Uber instead." You leaving my car in a random parking lot. Like I had tried so many different things that I was like, uh, I can't keep going on like this. If I want to be proud of the woman that I am, if I want to like wake up and be excited for the day, be proud of how I acted last night. Because, like, ultimately, I mean, even though the drunk version of ourselves we don't often feel like super connected to, that is us. And the
Mhm.
people that we're around in those moments, it's like whether or not we feel looking back that that was our authentic self, you're making an impression and it's still your face, your body, it's you. So it's like, how would you feel if someone else was like going on putting this like mask on to pretend to be Annie and like doing all these bad things, whatever, and then you having to deal with those consequences to be like, okay, we need to get that person the fuck away from my friends. Like, we need to get that person, we need to do something
Mhm.
about that. We need to like destroy that mask they're putting out because like they can't,
Yeah.
like, they need to stop pretending to be me. Like, that is not me. I don't want that reputation. I don't want people to feel that way around me, you know? So
Mhm.
I think I realized I was like, okay, if that was someone else doing all those things, like I would feel really defensive because it's like I work hard to be the person I am, to only have that be destroyed, you know, 5, 4, 3 nights a week, even one night a week, you know. It's like I was like, wait, but that's me. It's not even another person. That is me.
Mhm. And it's like
So
we don't have the memory tracking, so it's almost, it very much is like, "Oh, if I don't remember it, it wasn't me, it didn't happen." But the
mhm,
stories accumulating over and over, you start to see that isn't anybody else except for me doing that. And
yeah.
it's honestly nobody else's fault. I know in all of my drinking days, it was like, oh, it's because of this person and that person doing XYZ that when I was drunk, I lashed out. And it's like, no, that was inside of you. And you were just waiting for that trigger, that thing to let it out. That's you. And if you don't
Yeah.
want to be that way anymore, you got to fix that shit on the inside because you can't expect other people to not bring up certain things or not act a certain way. And you can't just be sitting around waiting to pull that trigger on like your emotional, just the baggage, the shit that's in there that comes out, or,
Yeah.
the defensiveness of if you knock into somebody with their glass, or the oh, somebody brought up this topic and now here's my room to interject and tell my life story and make it all about me and turn everything back on me. It's like, no, there's something really deep internal.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before, that it's not necessarily a rock bottom in the way that most people think. I think most people think a rock bottom is like, I got arrested, I lost my job, I lost my marriage. But it's really just an experience that is that final straw that breaks the camel's back. And I think that's what it was for you. And I don't know what happened kind of the rest of that holiday season after Halloween, but I'm sure everything kind of kept reminding you like, this is something internal of me. And then that's what kind of sparked January for you, January 2023. And
Yeah.
that was pretty much the same for me. It was like the lead up of everything bad happening in the holiday season. That was like, oh, I think I banked 3 holiday seasons that were really rough. 2017, 2018, and 2019 were the worst of the worst. And those 3 led me to be like, January of 2020, I'm gonna get that internal work done, because
Yeah.
obviously shifting the external, oh, I'm going to pace with water, I'm not going to drink until 2 p.m., or, I'm going to take a week off and then I'll be fine, or, just all of these external manipulations, they didn't do jack shit.
Mhm.
They didn't do jack shit until you actually take that magnifying glass and look inwards and be like, okay, what is it that is causing me to need to stay in this comfort zone? What is it that's causing me to look outwardly for all of these things? Um, and I think it's just really powerful for you. It wasn't something that most people would say, oh, that's definitely rock bottom.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
never hit a stereotypical rock bottom, right?
yeah, and we've even talked about some of the things. I mean, guys, we'll link it in the show notes, but I can link the episode Maggie and I did on my podcast, Let's Get Uncomfy, on some of our like lower drunken moments that you would think, listening to these moments, you would think, oh my God, they had to land a plane early for you and you got put on the do not fly list. If that didn't get you to stop drinking, what did, Annie? Yeah, I agree. I look back at that moment, and that's a true story, guys. That wasn't something that got me to stop drinking. No, it should have, but it was a group text from friends saying they wanted to take time away from me that
Mm-hmm.
really got me thinking like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
okay, wow. And you know what? I like to think of rock bottom, the concept not being like I woke up in jail having killed somebody because I was drunk driving, and now I'm, going to be sentenced to that. Like
Convicted
something
of
so
manslaughter.
dramatic
Yeah.
that you might think is rock bottom. I don't like, that's not rock bottom. That might be someone's rock bottom for sure. But at any point, you can choose to simply put down the shovel, stop digging, and start climbing. And that's your rock bottom. That's simply the lowest you're willing to go for you.
Mhm.
I got a shovel tattooed on my arm because that is such an important like realization, because I think we too often think we need to take it further. You think, oh, I'm not as bad as Becky. I'm not as bad as John. I'm not as
Mhm.
bad as so and so. So and so drinks more than me. So and so can outdrink me. So and so drinks more days a week than me. So and so gets drunker than me. So and so is
Mhm.
more embarrassing than me when drunk, more annoying than me. So and so has gotten a DUI. So and so has gotten these fines. So and so, who cares? At the end of the day, are you so and so? Are you John? Are you Becky? No.
Mhm.
So it's like, do you want to put yourself, 10 steps deeper just because you're comparing your pivotal point to someone else's
Mhm.
life? It's like, for me, that's kind of what I realized. I was like, you know what? Like, if I keep, if you think about drinking and the habit I was in, and drinking and having alcohol be a part of my life, it's like, if I continue digging in the way that I'm digging right now, how deep am I going to be in 5 years?
Uh-huh. Mhm.
And that terrified me. That was
Mhm.
really, really scary to me. And I think the realization that it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't going to take just simple manipulation of external things around me, or, the way I was, managing my drinking, or the way I was, you know, taking time off from drinking and whatever, like having water between my drinks. It wasn't gonna that wasn't gonna change anything.
Right.
It needed to be something deeper. And so for me, like Halloween, like I said, was a big pivotal moment for me. However, it wasn't the last time I drank. The story continues that I decided I was going to do no alcohol in November, which I lasted until Thanksgiving, which last Thanksgiving I was in Spain with my family for a wedding. And I ended up drinking at the wedding. Before, I think I had some wine. I was able to take it a little bit more casually because I think I had that internal realization. Um, but still ended up
Mhm.
did take it a little too far at the wedding, and then felt terrible the next day. And then when we got back, just right back into it. And then actually December, I got so sick. I think just also like, when you think about it, the effects alcohol has on your physical body, on your immune
Yeah.
system, on all of that, like I used to get sick all the time, like colds, and just like,
Mm.
I would call, oh, it's just like a seasonal something that's going around, a little bug that's going around, guys, I haven't gotten sick, I don't think, this whole year. Maybe
Yeah, I
once.
can't remember any time you've been like, "Yeah, I don't feel physically well."
I don't think so.
But yeah, it's so true. Like
And
the physical effects, you get physically ill, but your body is the instrument of your mind. So if you're always in anxiety, if you're always like stuck in the hangover depression, then your body isn't going to feel good, whether you have a bacterial infection, a cold, like even if you don't have a sickness, your body isn't going to feel good. That's something
yeah.
that really became apparent to me in my last
Mm,
kind of drinking stages. Was like, I'm not necessarily sick, but I feel really sick. And I remember that my last December being the same way. My
yeah.
last December. It sounds so dramatic.
I had gotten so sick that um and again, this is another thing that was very like crazy for me now looking back, especially, is like, I was so sick that we were doing Christmas with my grandparents, and with like all the COVID scares, and like my
Mm.
grandpa was like fighting some sicknesses and things, my family was kind of like, and they're usually like really open-minded to stuff, like they're like, oh
Yeah.
my god, no, like it'll be fine, whatever.
Mhm.
And they were kind of like, well, you know My aunt was battling cancer at the time, and they were like, "Well, if you're really sick, like, are you even gonna enjoy your time here?" Like, and they didn't want to
Mhm.
say it in a way of like, "Hey, if you're sick, like,
You're
don't."
uninvited.
Yeah, but yeah, I ultimately ended up staying in Dallas with Flo for Christmas. It's just us two, and my grandpa ended up passing a few weeks later, and oh yeah, I didn't get um a
Oh.
chance to see him, and that's crazy to think of, that just like the effects when you really look at it.
Mhm.
Again, that year 2022, like, we did so much traveling, and with that, I mean, drinking was so immersed into my
Daily.
style and what I
Mhm.
thought I needed to enjoy
Mhm.
myself, what I thought I needed to fully embrace travel and the
Mhm.
experiences and have the most fun and be the most, cool girl, whatever. Like,
Mhm.
that had took a toll on me, and physically, mentally, relationally, spiritually, all the things that, ultimately, I think that all came to a head there in December. And I remember spending Christmas with just me and Flo, which, I think we tried to make the best of it, but
Right.
especially then with my grandpa passing a few weeks later, it's just crazy. Like we said at the beginning, the moments, not only the moments you physically miss out on, like things like that, but mentally. I mean, even if we were there, would I have had any quality time, quality conversation? Would I have been so consumed with like, oh, I'm sick, let me just drink it away so I don't really
Yeah.
feel it, or again, the selfishness that alcohol really led me to. It's like, would I have gotten anything out of that time with my family anyway? I don't
Mhm.
know. I like to think yes, but who knows? Um, but yeah, I look back and like so many holiday seasons have been so intertwined with alcohol. And my family is not a family of drinkers. I will say, like, I really was the like designated person to take things too far. Um, and Maggie, we were talking about this before we clicked record, but it's like, in a lot of these holiday moments, experiences, family experiences where I was drinking and probably taking things too far. You asked me about, I was telling you a few Christmases ago, and for everyone listening, a few Christmases ago, um, I actually had a seizure. And I had been drinking all day. And then all of a sudden, apparently, I just started like seizing and shaking, and my eyes rolled back and passed out, and I was like unresponsive for like over a minute. And my family was all there with me, and
Mm.
freaking out. Like, I mean, the fear that they must have felt. And like, now you were like, was your mom there? Like, what did your
Yeah.
people say? What did your family say? And I, from the outside looking in, externally, I was the girl that had it all together. Like, I have successful businesses, I'm making the money, I'm independent, I'm responsible, I'm, taking care of my schedule, I'm showing up to things, I'm doing the
Yeah.
adulting, I own my own house, I'm externally doing fine. So I think there's this weird like, okay, wait, like she looks fine. And, externally, even when I look back at pictures, I mean, when I look back at pictures of myself when I was drinking, I'm like, oh my God, the bloat, the puffiness, the inflammation,
You
the
see it. Yeah.
the tired eyes, like I can see it. But, from like a normal perspective, it's like, oh, a healthy girl, like
Mm.
she looks healthy, she looks happy. So externally, that's what people were thinking of me. When in
Mhm.
reality, it's like, I was trying so hard to be the girl that could do it all and be the girl that could be successful, but then also be fun and be social and be free
Mhm.
and be spontaneous. But the reality of that situation was I was the girl that was doing it both. Yes, I was
Yeah.
working really hard and I was successful, but I was also in the midst of a really dark place.
Mm-hmm.
And that led to a lot of isolation, and that led to a lot of lonely feelings, hard, dark moments, where alcohol had me feeling like I couldn't tell anybody
Mm-hmm.
how dark and how alone I was feeling, because it's like, well, then I'm going to ruin this perception they have of me, of being the woman that has it figured out, the being the young, successful entrepreneur that I am. Like, I don't want to taint that image of me. So how could I let them know about this struggle that I'm going through, So my family seeing me through some of these things, like, I think from their perspective, it was like, well, I think she's just letting loose. Like, she's usually day to day
Mm-hmm.
really responsible, and she's on her shit, and she's fit, and she's healthy, and she's doing all the right things, and she's making money, and like professionally she's thriving. So, okay, let's not be too hard on her. Let's let her have her, you know, crazy little holiday week,
Right.
but they didn't know. They
They
didn't
didn't
know.
know what was going on inside. They couldn't have
Right.
known. Yeah. Yeah. And I was kind of the other end of the spectrum where when I was drinking, it was when I finally had the courage to say, I'm struggling, I'm angry, I'm sad, to bring it back. My holidays, I can't remember a holiday that wasn't the sense of like walking on eggshells, like since I was a kid, my earliest Christmas was like when my parents had gotten their divorce and my mom had a new boyfriend and she was drunk and my dad got home on deployment and came in and there was this huge fight on Christmas morning. And then, leading up and through like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, it was mom's drunk, but we're not going to talk about it. So like Christmas was always very awkward. And
Mm,
like, oh, well, let's just pretend everything's okay. Thanksgiving, the same way. The food sucked because my mom couldn't follow a recipe because she was cross-eyed drunk, like
yeah.
all these things, these kind of, I guess they became our traditions in a way of like, oh, we just deal with Robin's crazy drinking. And then after my brother passed away, it was like, now we also don't talk about that. We just ignore it. And when I started to introduce alcohol, it was like this huge looming cloud that set in around October, but really like November, Thanksgiving time, December. Eric's birthday is New Year's Eve. So, like, I always anticipated, like, oh, that's going to be a sad day. And I anticipated that. So it became that. And something that I remember so vividly in my memory is like after Eric passed away, I remember my mom being so consumed in her grief that I sensed that she basically forgot about me and my oldest brother, Jake. And like, I remember telling her, like, you're so lost in your sadness from Eric that you're blind to the fact that you have these other two living children to love and to be present with now. I was
Mm,
really angry about that. But guess what I was doing? The same exact freaking thing. I was so mad about my mom being a drunk. I was so mad about Eric being gone that to my dad, I was so nasty. Like he was my rock, but as a lot of, those rock relationships where they're going to love you unconditionally,
mm,
he was the one that I took out all my anger on. And I remember the last few Christmases with him, it was like, it came to fisticuffs. It came to like him having to hold me down physically because I was filled with rage. I was crying. I was screaming. One year I yelled at my grandma, his mom. And,
mm,
he's like, oh, homie, I ain't going to play that. You're not going to disrespect my mother. You're not going to talk like that to your grandmother. And I remember these huge, just all out brawls happening because I was so lost in my pain. And then after my dad passed away, and he passed away at the end of September, my husband's in-laws came for that Thanksgiving. They flew from all around the country to come stay with us on Thanksgiving in Savannah, Georgia. And I got toe up from the flow up. And it was so embarrassing because the dynamics of my in-laws, granted, hopefully nobody listens to this, but they know, they remember, there was a lot of drama between my mom-in-law and my dad-in-law. And basically the whole family was divided and they were really angry at my husband's dad. And I got on my drunken, I guess, stool and was preaching how you guys are so lucky that you even have your dad. Look at you guys, you ungrateful, I don't know what I called him, something. I sat up and basically lectured his entire family in my blackout stupor about how ungrateful they are for the fact that they have people that are living in their life and they're angry at them. But here I am being angry at everybody in my life because of what I've lost. Yeah. And so I really call like just that accumulation of events as like kind of my breaking point to my waking point of like, if I'm so angry that all of these people are gone, doesn't that give me an extra incentive to savor who I have left? Because I know the tangible feeling of like, last year I could have said this to this person and now they're not here. Yeah. Last year I could have hugged this person and now they're not here. Last year I was so obsessed with what I'm doing and what I want to talk about and how I'm the center of attention that I didn't even pay attention to my grandma or my dad if I wasn't yelling at them. And so for me, that is the motivation to be present. And I get so choked up. And even when you're talking about your aunt and your grandpa, like I got chills just because I know that from experience and that feeling of like, I would give anything to turn back time and change that. And I remember like laying in the bed Thanksgiving morning that year after I sat up all night lecturing his mainly his sister and his brother-in-law, who were very loving. They still don't bring it up to this day. They're like, that happened. We know you were angry. We know you were hurting. But I remember reading, and I pulled this up, this little like Instagram post that I found. And I was just like laying in my bed, still drunk, just sobbing. And it's called the empty chair prayer. And it goes, the pies are in the freezer, the turkey's on the list. But this Thanksgiving, oh, how a loved one will be missed. Lord Jesus, please hear our Thanksgiving prayer for those gathered around a table that has an empty chair. Oh, Lord, comfort their hearts. We know that you are able, and let them know that this year there's another chair at heaven's table. And as beautiful as that was, it still made me angry. And I remember sitting there on Thanksgiving, literally in Hangover City, looking at this empty chair and being so angry. But now I look at the metaphorical empty chair and I say, that's the reason why I'm not going to drink away my memories. That's the reason why I'm not going to try to escape this experience, because even if it is awkward the first year, it gets better and better. And you realize like how treasured memory making is. Like you are always going to remember when you're 56 years old, Annie, you're going to remember that moment with your grandma sitting cuddled up on the couch at your sister's gender reveal. You're going to remember that. Oh, I got chills again. You remember that. And you're just going to say, I am so thankful that I was present for that and that I have that in my pocket as something to revisit forever and ever, because the alternative of that is regret. I wish I would have done that. I wish I could have done that. And so any regrets that you have about holidays, use that as motivation, use that as fuel to your fire for like, this year I'm going to try something different, because who knows what's going to happen. And then who knows what's going to happen between this year and next year. And every single moment I want to be experiencing it and not numbing it out or distracting myself. And yeah, that takes stepping way outside your comfort zone. If you are very used to the 8 a.m. mimosas, even earlier, sometimes I would drink as soon as I woke up, like, drinking the night before Thanksgiving. That was like, I don't know if this is everywhere, but I know back in Kansas, the night before Thanksgiving was like the night to go out. Like
the bar night. Yeah.
The bar night, the busiest night of the year. Yeah. Busiest night of the year to go out in your hometown, basically. It's like your high school reunion. At least that's how it was in Topeka. And so like, I remember waking up so many Thanksgiving mornings and like sneaky drinking And then around like 10 a.m., it'd be like socially acceptable to pour myself a mimosa. But at that point, I was already almost blackout. So, like,
Mhm.
how many of those conversations did I give up? Well, you know what? I could sit and dwell on that all freaking day and it could ruin my mood. Or I could say, that happened. How do I want that to change how I show up now?
Yeah.
And if you really anchor into that, you're going to be so surprised how interested you are to go cultivate the conversation with auntie or grandma or cousins. Like, you're going to have this sense of like, I'm home. Even if you're not at your home, you're going to realize like these people are my home. And I don't
Mhm.
know why I was so nervous to show up here, because they love me, and they love me even more when I'm not blackout drunk lecturing or yelling at them. I will say that for sure.
Yeah. And honestly, I think like also a point to be made is that like whether or not you have bad memories associated with holidays and drinking, and you're here listening to like the stories Maggie and I just shared, like you're like, oh my God, well, I didn't have a seizure on Christmas Day, so I'm crushing it, or
Right.
I didn't lecture people, about my own personal situation and while I was drunk, like that didn't happen. So I'm obviously fine. It goes back to what we were talking about the rock bottom thing. It's like, do you want to keep going that route? And if you're listening to this episode, there's clearly some sort of curiosity, whether you've leaned into sobriety yet or not, there's some sort of curiosity within you in regards to how alcohol is showing up in your life and kind of discovering what it might be like if alcohol wasn't a part of your life. So, for me looking forward now, if you're somebody who can relate to that statement right there, you don't like make your situation seem like don't give yourself excuses to not lean into that curiosity around sobriety simply because there are people out there drinking more than you, and it can very well be within your own family. Like you could be
Mhm.
like, well, I'm sober curious, but I know my family's going to be blackout drunk and they're fine with it. Like, maybe there's no drama around it. Maybe it's almost the expectation that everyone's going to be drinking, everyone's going to be, on that same level. And you're like, well, that's kind of what's expected. You're not out of the norm when you're drinking. Okay, that doesn't mean that that has to be the norm for you. You are able to set your own personal boundaries and standards. And if, leading up to these holidays, if you haven't been living up to the standards and aligning with the boundaries that you want to have for yourself, just know it's perfectly okay to be like, you know what, I'm going to try this Thanksgiving without alcohol. And my tips for you, if that's you, prepare yourself by bringing your own drinks that you enjoy, that you love, so that when someone offers you wine, you're like, no, I actually have this like really yummy poppy over here. I have this like, seltzer mocktail that I'm making. Actually, do you want one? I can make one for you
Mhm.
too.
Mhm.
Um, bring about a sense of like excitement for yourself. It doesn't have to be excitement for other people. They don't have to get excited about the fact that you're, making your own mocktails, but
Yeah.
find within yourself some sort of excitement, pride, just like, hey, new experience. I'm going to
Mhm.
try this whole sober family time thing, sober holiday thing. And just know that in doing that, you're going to gain so much awareness on, first off, on your own feelings around it. Maybe everyone's having wine, and once you get past, this is something I realized in my early stages of like sober curiosity, is like once I got past that first drink, everyone having that first drink, that first glass of wine, that first mimosa, that first drink, and if I just said no to that first one and said, no, I'm going to have this mocktail, the rest of the night was pretty easy because then everyone's
Right.
just refilling
Mhm.
themselves. Everyone's kind of just doing their thing, feeling their own vibe, leaning into their own tipsiness. That if you just say no to that first one and you find comfort in that and be like, you know what? That feels good to me right now. Drink your drink, enjoy some conversation. You're going to have a lot of awareness around how other people show up a little bit tipsy. You're going to have
Mhm.
sober eyes on the whole situation, that maybe seeing how other people, I know this happened for me, seeing the way other people started socializing when they were tipsy and kind of thinking like, wow, is that what I sound like? Like sitting there
Mhm.
having a conversation where you're dead ass sober and, your aunt's a little tipsy. You're going to be like, wait, why would why would I think 2 glasses of wine would make me better at this? You
Yeah.
know, and then also just your own feelings around it. Like, wow, I am, when everyone's 1 or 2 drinks deep and I'm 0, I am able to have a great conversation with my grandpa. I am able to have a great conversation with my sister's boyfriend. Like, I
Mhm.
am able to have, make this memory with this person, or even just sit on my own and kind of like watch everything and be
Soak
present,
it in. Yeah.
you know. I think just like kind of tallying those moments and kind of just making note of how you feel in those instances while you're sober, and everyone else might not be, and that's totally okay, is a win. And
Mhm.
so I just encourage you guys, if you are listening to this and you are sober curious, just do it, and commit to it. Go into that day with that intention, and just know, yeah, there might be some uncomfortable moments or uncomfortable conversations where people are like, well, why aren't you drinking? Are you pregnant? Or do you have a problem, or what happened?
Mhm.
Or,
Mhm.
asking you these kind of weird questions. Maybe come up with some like, oh no, actually, and this is what I did in the early stages, like, find a goal that's aligned with sobriety but isn't specifically sobriety, so that if people ask you, and this is what I did, why aren't you drinking? Oh, well, I'm on prep, actually. I'm working to compete in bodybuilding competition. Now it doesn't have to be that intense. Maybe it's something more along the lines of like, well, actually, I'm just I'm working on, I have a workout in the morning, or
Mhm.
I, whatever that goal is, I have an appointment I have to make, or I have this thing I want to do tonight. So I'm just going to make sure I'm clear headed for that tonight.
Mhm.
I'm studying for this program, or whatever it is, it can be weight loss, fitness oriented, health oriented, or something else. But find something that you feel more comfortable saying to a group of people.
Mhm.
Because if you're able to come up with a reason and be confident in that, you're going to be confident in sticking to your sobriety goals as well, if that makes sense.
Oh,
Did
it
I
makes total
right?
sense. It makes total sense. And that it was kind of like my biggest tip that I found was, when I would travel for Christmas to see our in laws or something the past few years, I would bring my laptop and my little hard drive, and I had like Sean T's Insanity or like a
Yeah.
T25. And I wasn't preparing for a show by any means, but I would get up even on Christmas morning. It was not last year, but the year before. I got up and I went downstairs to the basement and I did my workout. Well, now everybody knows, hey, she's working on being healthy. So it was kind of a statement in and of itself. So people weren't really that thrown off that I didn't immediately come upstairs and join them for Bloody Marys. It was like, no, I just did my workout. I'm going to drink my water and get my good breakfast. And then it almost felt like I had this, not almost, I did. I had this intrinsic motivation then to continue making healthy choices because I had
Mhm.
already primed my mind for that in the morning, as Annie says, prime my mind for it.
Yeah.
And it was like a turnoff to then think about drinking wine. But as soon as I put a mocktail, I remember I just did like a little splash of pineapple with some club soda in a fancy champagne flute. As soon as I did that, it was like, they say your mind cannot interpret what's imagined versus what's real. And
Mhm.
it was like I tricked my mind into thinking, I'm part of this. Like everybody else is drinking and so am I. It didn't matter that what was in my glass didn't have alcohol. In fact, it made me feel better because it was feeding into the goal that I had primed my mind for that morning with my
Right.
little workout. So, your imagination and how you just perceive and expect things to go, on top of like little things that you can do on your routine, setting yourself up around the holidays and even on the holiday morning, like it will pay off in dividends. And you
Mhm.
can hear us saying this, but we really urge you to experience it, because if you just listen, you're going to be thinking about it in theoretics. But
Mhm.
when you do it, you're going to have this feeling that takes over of like, oh, wow, I learned exactly how this feels. Oh, wow, I know that I can do it. I have confidence. I have discipline now. And I have some routine and structure. So, just some little tips and tricks there. Always go prepared. Try to maintain some healthy routine around that. Even role playing how you're going to respond to certain questions. There's no shame in role playing, talking to yourself in the mirror, and really imagining positive interactions versus, in the past when I failed, I imagined that people would be like, oh, you're so lame. So then I wouldn't even get like my good response out. I would just automatically crumble to let me have a drink in case they're going to say I'm lame. And it's like, that was all just imagined. I just
Mhm.
made that up in my mind.
Yeah.
So really imagine them being supportive and you just having a great time, and how you're going to feel at the end. This is kind of, I would say, cliche advice in this realm, but it really is powerful of like thinking the drink through. And then when you see Aunt 3 glasses in and her bottle of wine, you're like, oh, I'm so happy that I'm like where I am in my mind and I have clarity and I'm here and I'm present. And then you have like this empowering sense take over too, that like, I got my shit together. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That's
Finally.
a
Uh,
Oh, oh my goodness. Yeah, I love this conversation. I think we hit on so many good things, so many good takeaways for people that might be considering sobriety this holiday season. Um, and maybe you're new in your sobriety journey
mhm.
and you just need some support knowing, hey, you're not crazy. You're not, you're really not. And we just want to send you guys so much love and empowerment and some confidence and just
Mhm.
own it. Own your standards for yourself and start living up
Mhm.
to them yourself. And it's crazy what will happen when you make the change internally, how the rest of your life will kind of follow suit. So we are kind of sending you good vibes wherever you're at listening to this episode. We love you guys so much. And I guess you'll hear from us next time.
Thanks for tuning in to OJ in the Kitch, and we will be talking soon. So much love.
Bye, guys.